All right, good afternoon, everybody. This panel is for future infrastructure, connected mobility, and electric vehicles. My name is Weston Sheldon. I'm from Siemens eMobility. We're part of the Smart Infrastructure division of Siemens. Today we have the current opportunity to radically transform the way we transport people and goods from one place to another. And it has undoubtedly sparked the interest of not just the automakers that we've seen from the other presentations, but it's also sparked some of the interest from some of the largest Fortune 500 companies across the world and their leaders. So all of these industries are changing, and it's also taken some of the governments across the world spark their interest, as we've seen from these infrastructure bills. And it's also sparked the interest from drivers like you and me about EV technology. So we've got some great panelists here to kind of give us their thoughts, tell us about some of the projects they're working on, some of the challenges that they faced. But really, the goal for Siemens and for some of our customers is to make travel more efficient and faster, but yet safer and more equitable and more environmentally beneficial. But nothing really, in my mind, exemplifies this more than the realization of electric mobility. So we've got some great panelists here. I'm going to start over here at the very, my right. We've got Al Curtis, right here behind me. He's the Fleet Services Director with Cobb County Government. Then we've got over here on the far end, we've got Gil Grodzinsky, did I say that right? Supervisory Modeler for Georgia Environmental Protection Division. Next to Gil, we've got Jen Shepard. She's the Global Head for Uber Transit. And then we've got Seth Yerman. And then we've got, sorry, Seth, I didn't mean to skip over Keith, but Keith Robinson, Deputy Commissioner, Department of Public Works for the City of Atlanta. Seth Yerman, he is the Assistant City Manager for the City of Peachtree Corners. Joe Gillis, Senior Project Manager, works with the Georgia DOT. He works with, he's part of AECOM's team. And then Al Curtis right here, who I just mentioned. And then I'm Wes Sheldon, Siemens eMobility. So kind of kick things off, we'll start with some topics around infrastructure. And this so what I want to do here is I'm just going to tee off some questions to the panelists, kind of open it up for discussion. And then we'll kind of see where the conversation goes, but then we'll kind of keep the flow going. So this first question, turn this way here so I can see you guys. So the demand, for EVs, right? It's been probably never higher than it's ever been, right? So with this huge demand and with the automakers, obviously moving to a zero emissions model for, probably by the end of the decade, they're planning to have, at least most of them are going to have, all their models be battery electric or some kind of plug-in hybrid format. It presents infrastructure challenges, right? Especially around vehicle charging, like we saw from the presentation before. Can you address how we can overcome some of these challenges from your perspective in the businesses that you're in? And what are missed opportunities that we might not be considering at the moment right now? And I'll start with Keith, because I think you're a good person to kind of kick this off.
All right, thank you. That's a great question. I think one of the things that we really have to pay close attention to is one of the key drivers to this really is countries in Europe, states like California, China are phasing out internal combustion engines. So EVs are going to be here, whether we like it or not. And the auto manufacturers themselves are really focusing on transitioning their models to an EVs or even hydrogen vehicles, but it looks like EVs are going to be the real key thing. So what we really have to focus on now is the infrastructure that we develop for EVs. And I think that's going to be one of the key areas for us. And I think that's one of the missed opportunities, or an opportunity, not missed opportunity, is really partnering with very different folks in the value chain to develop more charging stations. And I think there's going to be a great, private-public partnership there as well, too. And the other part of the missed opportunity is, with increased EVs coming on, is working with the electric companies, because it's going to provide 20 to 30% more stress on the grid and providing more infrastructure on that side to handle it, that's going to be the great opportunity.
Great.
I'll echo that. From a local government perspective, there have been missed opportunities. In Peachtree Corners, we operate something called a Curiosity Lab. I invite all of you to this whenever you want. I'll talk more about it, but Curiosity Lab is this living lab. It's an ecosystem where a purpose-built lab where technologies really across smart cities, 5G, IoT, mobility, connectivity can come and test, demo, scale up. As part of that, a lot of EV, we have autonomous vehicle shuttles that are going up and down Technology Parkway. We have a 5-kilometer test track. They're all electric. And we have solar roadway. There's all sorts of things we can do as far as missed opportunities, and really on the local government level, cities, counties, getting as developments come in and we want to create mixed-use developments, the local government and the residents have this open forum to create zoning conditions to make EV-ready parking spaces. And so those are the opportunities we need to seize. Everybody before say, hey, EV is here. No doubt it is. So combination of setting up chargers on the local level, making developers, compelling developers in exchange for a zoning to start putting in all of this infrastructure. So possibly a missed opportunity, but people are catching up to speed, and this is where we need to be in the future.
Joe, you got some comments for that? Yeah.
As a civil engineer in the transportation space, I'm looking more at the role of what happens on the highways, the freeways, what can be done. And I know that my parent company, as well as the company I work for on contract, that's AECOM and GDOT, I know there's certainly things in the works looking at different opportunities. And I think trying to help get more locations for electric vehicle charging, for other things, the roadway to support not only that, but also could CAV, autonomous vehicles and connected vehicles. Certainly, infrastructure has to be done from a transportation standpoint at traffic signals and other areas that can be done. It's an idea of just trying to get ready, just trying to be prepared for what's coming. Because for this stuff to work, not only do you have to have the things we're talking about with electric vehicles and with power and charging stations, but y'all got to have the road to be in the correct mode to work. The vehicles are going to have to be able to quote unquote see what the road looks like, where it is. It has to have an accurate location. There's a lot of things that have to be done in preparation from a DOT or a consultant standpoint to get ready for the public to get out there on these autonomous vehicles to use the system in their electric vehicles.
Now, Al, I want to kind of steer this one a little bit different for you because, Cobb County was a early adopter for electric vehicles and really alternative fuel vehicle technology, right? What were some of the obstacles that you faced, and maybe some of the strategies that that were deployed that that you guys did at Cobb County?
Well, excuse me. One of the strategies we use to kind of deploy electrification and just alternative fuel vehicles in general, looking at the duty cycles of our operators. I mean, that's the key piece, and that was one of the biggest challenges, obstacles that we had with our user departments. They didn't think electrification or any alternative type fuel vehicle would fit the mix. But when you put the rubber to the road and the pen to the pad and look at exactly their duty cycles on how far they drove and the benefits of any particular type of alternative type fuel, cost benefit, cost per mile reduction, vehicle operational cost reduction, it really put everything in perspective as far as how we actually started. And we have a really diverse fleet size. We travel about 10 million miles a year. We have about 2,600 units, and about 100 of those are electric. One of the biggest challenges we had in that electrification movement was, of course, police. And I don't know how many municipalities or governments or cities, police are one of the hardest adopters of change when it comes down to moving them out of an ICE vehicle. But through ride and drives, through communication, through showing them the benefit of electrification and under respect to cost reduction and greenhouse gas emission reduction, they have, I think, one of the largest hybrid fleets, I think, in Georgia right now. And our electric fleet right now, I think, is one of the second largest in the state currently.
Where do you see room, for improvement, or which section of fleets do you see the biggest benefit to going all electric in your mind?
Of course, in the light-duty segment, the heavy-duty segment, medium-duty segment hadn't caught up yet, but there's some major traction there. But there is some opportunity there when it comes down to electric bucket trucks. If you have anything dealing with bucket trucks, there's electric PTOs that you can actually add to these vehicles to reduce, of course, the total cost of ownership and also reduce greenhouse gas emission because these vehicles idle consistently. They consistently idle. And if you can reduce that by putting electric PTOs that run the bucket, that would definitely reduce your total cost for a lot of these utilities that are out here. Georgia Power and Cobb EMC, I think they've embraced some of that as well. That is some opportunity there in the medium duty space. But the light duty space, there's multiple amount of opportunities there. And for infrastructure, one of the missed opportunities I think a lot of the counties may have lost out on was grant potential. We started out in 2014 using grants to add our electric vehicle infrastructure, and our ecosystem for electrification has consistently grown over time.
Seth, I'm going to go back to you one time. You guys are obviously doing a lot of innovative stuff in Peachtree Corners. What were, some of the lessons learned early on that you guys had to deal with, as part of some of these infrastructure challenges?
Yeah, so lessons learned. So Curiosity Lab and this testing facility, open course testing facility, has been around since about 2019. Very common. 2019, 2020 happened. So obviously the whole COVID thing. Lessons learned, it was kind of a good and bad thing, kind of a blessing, but we underestimated probably the amount of interest in technologies. So we have a startup, kind of an incubator program, so a lot of startups, international and domestic. We also have Fortune 100 companies there. Our partners are there in university, huge partner with Georgia Tech and T-Mobile. And so we have this fast wireless 5G. It's all there, and we probably underestimated the amount of demand and the interest that would come about. So we own what we call the Innovation Center, a headquarters. It's 25,000 square feet, and that 25,000 square feet filled up real quick. And so we have the kind of good/bad problem of we have a lot of demand for space and companies and OEMs and people that want to share in this cool thing that we're doing and everyone across the region. And so probably underestimated that. We're playing real estate agents now and getting more property, more land. That was probably the biggest miss that we're making up for, is just the underestimated interest in all of this. Yeah.
Al, any lessons learned, from your experiences since you were an early adopter as well with EV? I mean, anything you could share from a lessons learned perspective?
Basically, lessons learned would be make sure we engage our drivers. Education is one of the biggest key portions of it. And showing the benefit of the total cost of ownership being reduced and the cost per mile being reduced as well. Just getting drivers in the seats. And one key point that kind of stalled us there for a minute was having a $7,500 tax credit for the state and the $75,000 for federal. It really propelled us into an area where we could get an electric vehicle and procure that on a, commensurate almost to a gas vehicle. But when we lost that, and I don't know if anybody knows, but back in 2014, Georgia led the whole nation in electric vehicle sales. Once when we lost that tax credit, we went to I'm not going to say to the bottom of the line, but we fell real far. And my takeaway for that is we need to think about trying to get that back to continue to drive that electrification movement here in Georgia and push us back to where we need to be.
Yeah, there were a lot of Nissan Leafs on the roads during those days. I remember that, yeah. I would shift the conversation over to, kind of addressing the workforce that's there's going to be we all know there's going to be a workforce shift when we go to this electric fleet. And then what I mean by that is, the technology is different than our traditional ICE vehicles. And I think that's, something that these people can, up on the stage, can maybe help speak to about what that workforce development might look like. And so maybe, I'll start with, maybe Keith, maybe you can kind of talk to this about how, the automotive workforce is going to need to reskill to, to prepare for the future of connected electric vehicles. So, what should cities be thinking about, to help prepare the next generation of workers to be ready for this software electric, first workforce?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think that's one of the things that's top of mind for, especially, for our fleet division is, the electric vehicle is completely different than the traditional engine. So the work skills that you're going to need is going to be much different, where the transmission is completely different than, your regular. And that's where you see most of the failures. But there's going to be a lot of mechanical parts which aren't there in an electric vehicle. Even the braking system is completely different. So really training up the existing workforce to be prepared for the future. If not, you're going to have a whole bunch of mechanics or technicians who are going to be obsolete. So that's one of the things that we're constantly looking at, really looking at how to begin to prepare our workforce for the future, and also understanding software too, because software is going to be very important along with connected vehicles. So that whole skill set is going to look much different than what it did today. I mean, if you take it like when I grew up, I could pop up an old muscle car and work on the thing. And even now, cars, now I look at it like, what the heck am I looking at? It's going to be more interesting as we move forward. So.
Great. Yeah, Seth, I mean, kind of the same question to you. I mean, you've got a lot of innovative companies there in Peachtree Corners. What are they doing as far as addressing some of these challenges? Are they developing any kind of work plans, or is there companies there that are looking at this from a smart city perspective? What do you see happening as far as innovations go from developing the workforce?
So yeah, we're pretty agnostic in the city as far as the specific technology. So anybody who wants to play in the Curiosity Lab in the city and in the greater area is welcome. A lot of the companies, again, from startups to big established companies, are thinking about training and thinking about that workforce development, whereas they're proving out their technology, scaling it up for kind of entrance into the market in Peachtree Corners and in the Atlanta area. Concurrently, we're talking to a lot of these folks that are doing this innovation and saying, we also need to be developing training programs and developing internships and these programs that younger folks get into on the ground level. Everybody's gonna have to be tech savvy. Before the advent of the cell phone, kind of everybody was like, and then we got cell phones and everybody's kind of somewhat of an expert on it. The next generation of this is coming now with the connected mobility. The cell phone will still play a big role, but you're gonna have that kind of capabilities in cars, in scooters, in drones, and all sorts of stuff. So we're all, concurrent with the innovation of these new technologies. These companies are now starting to think of, all right, this is really going to hit the ground and go. So training programs, internships, getting a whole generation of people involved is what's going on.
Gotcha. And Al, I mean, I want to talk to you again, because managing fleet vehicles, you probably got a skill set of workers who are used to working on combustible engines. What are you doing, or what do you see as the transition to EVs? How does that skill set change for your team? What does that look like going in the looking ahead, maybe 5-10 years? Does that change?
Well, looking at it early on, like I said, early adopters, 2014, we had Nissan Leafs, and we had them on the ground, and the technicians from Nissan didn't know how to work on them.
Okay.
So we went hand in hand with these guys, going over the vehicles themselves. But let's fast forward from that. Our technicians in our vehicles, the Nissan Leafs that we got in 2014, we've had them since that time, over 150,000 miles, and have not installed any brakes on the vehicles. There's 20 moving parts in an electric vehicle, 20, versus 2,000 moving parts on an ICE vehicle. So you think about, like we just talked about, the technician utilization. What happens to those technicians? So we've actually retrained them, the ones that we didn't well, not didn't retain, but we trained them into the heavy-duty arena because we knew we were going to have more heavy-duty electrification coming. So we had them take that knowledge and move it over to the heavy-duty side, because as we got more of those vehicles in, of course, you didn't need that many technicians to work on them. So in that respect, that's what we actually did to kind of leverage moving technicians around to make sure we didn't have to lose any, because in this current market, technicians are one of the hardest things to find currently right now. And a lot of the trade schools, I'm on the actual Chattahoochee board, Chattahoochee Technical School board, and we're talking to those colleges to let them know, hey, you guys need to start putting some curriculum in place for these people that go into school, because that's where our next technicians are going to come from. And if the colleges don't know what we need out on the ground, then they're not going to be able to help us. And we definitely need that in the colleges, and we need to get more people involved in the technical schools to recruit technicians to make sure that they get the information that they need.
Gil, I want to, haven't talked to you yet, so I want to direct a question to you. You know, with the Environmental Protection Division, you know, what can you kind of maybe kind of go explain to us, like what are you looking at as far as the reduction of emissions and pollutants in terms of the conversion to electric vehicles? What are some of the things that you're looking at and studies that you're doing? And, you know, kind of put that in perspective for us. What are the things that we should be paying attention to?
Well, I mean, the role the Georgia Environmental Protection Division is to address the emissions and the air quality aspects. At least I'm in the air branch, so there could be water and land, but my focus is air, so that's what I'll be talking about today. And then our goal is to try to reduce emissions, get us to be in compliance with all of the EPA standards. And that's good for business, that's good for the air, that's good for everyone. And so right now we're still in non-attainment, hopefully for not a long time, much longer for ozone. And so we want to get all the chemistry, the precursors, the NOx and VOCs, these type of chemicals, we want to get those reduced. And switching, you know, electric vehicles are considered an emission control strategy. And I'm part of the emission control strategies unit, and our job is to try to figure out ways to get our emissions down, to get us clean with the EPA, and also there's the greenhouse gas aspect. And so electric vehicles are a good tool for that, because the tailpipe, there are no emissions in the tailpipe. So, so that's very important. But in the reality of things, we also, I'm working on the planning side and the modeling side, so I look to the future. And I look at, you know, this concern about, you know, this increased adoption of electric vehicles. We're getting, the OEMs are buying into having all these new models. We have all this demand from the population. The people are waiting a year for an electric vehicle. So what I'm really concerned about, just since the hot topic is about electric vehicles and connected vehicles, is that this surge in demand is to be like trying to get to the moon in the same decade, back in the 60s. This is something that's probably, for some people, unprecedented. We're talking about new technology, we're talking about this stuff, but it has to get done fast, and faster than we're used to. And then you have a supply issue, then you have costs, and you have coordination. And this all has to be done at warp speed. I mean, we're talking very quickly. You want to have those electric, you're talking, I go to a lot, I listen to a lot of webinars. There are people talking about having 1 million vehicles in their state. I guess it's Illinois. They want to have 1 million vehicles by like 2025, and they only have like, I don't know, 30,000 now. I mean, these are really aggressive goals, and I think it's really important for people to realize that this is not business as usual. This is accelerating. This is all hands on deck, all stakeholders on deck. This has to be done fast. We have to find ways to streamline. We need to have people talk to each other across all sectors. We need to go all the way from the utilities, from the OEMs, from the regulators ourselves. We need to be all working together and be together to get this done properly. You said lost opportunities. One lost opportunity is a lot of the materials, a lot of the minerals, a lot of the stuff could have been done locally, domestically here, but instead we're playing catch up. Hopefully, I believe that just like with everything else, we'll catch up with that as well. And I like to use the moon analogy, because no one believed it could be done in 10 years. They didn't even barely had a program. And so I believe it can be done, but people need to really be seriously understanding, as a planner myself, as a modeler, we're modeling to 2050, and we're assuming we don't have it in there that like by 2050, 50% of vehicles are going to be electric. We don't model that. The fact that may be a possibility is quite a big thing. So that's basically my perspective. So our goal at EPD is to get the air quality better, to model it, to comply with standards. But I also understand, we also want to see that everything that the infrastructure and everything is there.
Nice. Okay. Good. Thank you.
Sure.
Jen, Uber Transit's a really interesting business model. Would you take some time and just kind of explain kind of what that looks like for those who may not be familiar with Uber Transit versus the traditional Uber model? And, maybe, and then kind of tell us about, what Uber Transit's doing to help serve areas that aren't necessarily served by, traditional transit today.
Sure. And first I'll just say, we at Uber, we're very proud for contributing to some of those aggressive goals you just talked about. We do have a goal of by 2030 to becoming a zero emissions platform in the US, Canada, and Europe, outside of micromobility and transit. And we're also investing about $800 million to help riders convert to these green cars by 2025. So totally agree with you. On the transit side, which is my world, we basically have two sides of the platform. One is really helping public transit agencies like MARTA serve hard to reach populations or late night or outages. And then the other is on the rider side, helping increase new mobility options and mobility connections such that we eventually reduce personal car ownership. On the agency side, we're very proud that we're able to help public agencies serve underserved populations. We're seeing great traction in the paratransit space, where we're able to get to certain parts of the community more reliably, more on demand, and even more efficiently. We're about half the cost as dedicated supply. And we're really growing. Like we've partnered with MBTA in Boston, and over the last few years, with our partnership, they're able to actually expand 28% their paratransit program and even reducing their costs. We also do, a partnership with Dallas, DART, where they've actually reduced their least efficient fixed route and increased their service population with microtransit and using some of our services as well. And they're very proud at the results that they're getting, very efficient and great customer service. And then with MARTA, we do outage vouchers. So if the train or buses go down, we are there to make sure mobility options are still there for the population. On the rider side, we've integrated journey planning. So if you open up the Uber app and you're trying to get from point A to point B, it'll show you MARTA options, buses and trains. And we're very proud of that. My job is to try and promote it and try and get people to actually use it a little bit more. We also have ticketing in some cities where you can buy public transit tickets in the Uber app. And then even we're starting to get into multimodal options to make it even more compelling for riders to think about, do I really need that second car? Or, is the value proposition there that I can do an Uber, a bike and a scooter, a train, a bus, and it's, potentially cheaper or faster or whatever matters to that rider. So very excited to get into that space and also excited about, the technology innovation for the electric vehicles.
Where do you see this intermodal or multimodal model in market going, in the next 3 to 5 years or so?
Is it 35 years? Or
3 to 5 years,
Oh.
yeah, not 35. I wouldn't be flying in a car for 35 years.
Yeah, so the mass space, the mobility as a service space, it's a really tough one. We believe there are so many benefits to it. Policy, sustainability, reducing personal car ownership. However, changing rider behavior is really, really hard. We've learned that the last couple of years, and people love their cars. And so, we're doing lots of experiments globally of what this could make sense. And right now we're going really deep in London. And we've got an Uber boat branded in London that's connected. We're doing intercity travel in London. And so we're going to try and figure out how to make it work and figure out how to change rider behavior. 3 to 5 years, like I honestly, my opinion, like I don't think we're going to make huge headway in the mass space, but 10 years, maybe.
10 years.
Yeah.
What about to like autonomous vehicles?
Yeah.
Is that, you see that in the roadmap?
So, yes, so autonomous, we've got partnerships with Waymo, a few others, we're expanding them. It's not my specific area. We do believe Uber has a place to play here. Right now, it doesn't work for a lot of journeys, but we can work really well of integrating autonomous journeys with our first and last mile, standard journeys. We're very interested and dedicated in investing in this space, and we're even on the delivery side going to robots and things that we're testing out. It's all very small, but we believe it is the way of the future.
Great. Yeah, that's a good segue to my next topic, about bridging the gap to autonomous vehicles and these connected vehicles. Joe, I kind of want to go back to you on this one. You work with the Georgia DOT, and when you speak to them and others like the DOT, what are they looking at in terms of connected mobility and preparing the roads, like you mentioned, for autonomous vehicles in the future of autonomous vehicles?
Sure. So there's really a few things going on there. One is, it sounds very basic, but you got to have a clean road. You got to have good striping. You got to be able to, those you have LiDAR and other types of cameras that have to be able to see where the lines are to kind of verify that the vehicle's in line. Now, there's also a map that the vehicles kind of use GPS to try to track on the road, but it uses these other systems. In fact, my Volkswagen Atlas actually has the automatic line. It keeps you within the line, so that kind of stuff's going to advance. Another thing that we're also kind of looking at, not just we, but everybody's looking at, is there's a lot going on with the communication spectrum. There was a recent change where it looked like DSRC was going to be the lead for like 20 years. And the FCC has come in, and now it looks like it's going to be C to V2X, so there's changes there. And work that's been done toward DSRC is going to be looked at, and how can it be modified to be C to V2X. So those things have to be kind of looked at. And there's a little bit of a, I won't say a pause, but there's a little bit of, okay, let's recalibrate, let's readjust. Because if we're going to have to go more from DSRC, which we all thought it was going to be, now it's C to V2X, a little bit of change there. And there's also, as I said earlier, getting ready for electric vehicles, because electric vehicles definitely, I don't want to say it's required, but it's just about required for CAV because of the way that kind of technology works. You really almost need an electric vehicle for that to work right. That's kind of the big things. And then can I speak just briefly about the question about workforces for a moment? Is that okay? One thing I was thinking of, I was at a Georgia section of Institute of Transportation Engineers meeting on Tuesday, and one thing that came to mind is that so many people in the room with me, they're working with the SIGOPS program, which manages traffic signals around the state. And there's going to be some retraining at the civil engineering level in the future to realize that you're not going to be timing signals in the same way. If we have everything connected, they're going to have to know how to use algorithms more, not necessarily manual or having plans in advance that way. It's going to be a little different, especially if you're able to have vehicles platooning closer together, trying to get those through. It's going to be a whole different ballgame in terms of how you train civil engineers in the future.
Do you see, kind of on your vehicle to everything, the C2VX kind of topic there, is this a bandwidth issue that you see? Is that why the FCC had to make this change in regulation? Is that what that was?
Sure,
Can you talk to that?
I'll give a very brief answer to that. I don't want to take too long. You could do a whole talk on that, but what we had was 75 megahertz allocated. FCC had a lot of pressure to provide more Wi-Fi space, so that 75 has been cut down to 30. And within that 30, it was going to be 10 to DSRC and 20 to C to V2X, but it's probably going to end up being 30 to C to V2X. And the question is, there are some applications that might need more than 30. So they're looking into those sorts of things. And so what you're going to see is that applications that don't need but maybe 20 to 30 are going to be the ones that are done first. And it's going to be safety. Certainly, it's going to be the big thing. But they may have to figure out a way to do the others with less bandwidth. So that's really what they're looking at now. So a lot of the things you're seeing now are figuring out what can we do with 30 megahertz that we're hoping we have 75. Now we got 30. Now what?
Yeah. Yeah, Gil, can you speak to the how we can achieve reliable safety with communications? I think that was something you had mentioned you wanted to talk about.
Well, that's not my area expertise.
Okay.
I can only speak to the fact that I go to all these meetings with transportation planners, and transportation is connected to clean, to emissions. They designed it so that the FHWA, USDOT, and the EPA sides would be able to work in tandem. You wouldn't have the EPA trying to have these emission standards and have the USDOT have all these new roads that would counter the efforts. So you want everyone to work together. Okay. So I'm part of that transportation conformity process. But in the discussions, they were talking about how the benefits of connected vehicles, which is a really big project happening in the Atlanta area, with signal timing and all this other stuff, with the idea of reducing deaths and serious injuries on our roads. The goal of Vision Zero I've heard about. And so the nice thing about connected vehicles and electric vehicles and alternative vehicles and environment and economy is that for once we have an alignment between saving. You can save money with electric vehicle. It used to be, battery prices have gone way down even with the inflation problems. And safety can be improved and the environment all at one time. And that's why the OEMs are buying into electric vehicles, because it's economical. So you have something that's economical, that's safe, and good for the environment altogether. When I was younger, it wasn't always the case, but we have that now. And so it's very exciting to be able to do all that at one time, if we play our cards right.
Last topic I have is around the autonomous city. And this is really kind of more for you, Seth, can we talk a little bit more about what Peachtree Corners and the Curiosity Lab and what the future looks like with the new charging hub that Peachtree Corners is looking to develop, and what the idea of this autonomous city looks like?
So this is in the smart city space, which is 50 different definitions of that. But where we focus is both in the EV space. So we've got the largest DC fast charging hub in the area at our town center. Y'all may know the pedestrian bridge, the forum. That area is where Peachtree Corners is. Tesla, Electrify America. That's a big pull. In the autonomous vehicle, which they're all electric vehicles, right now what we're doing is, again, we've created this 5-mile test track, live track, with trees and 13% grade and conflict points with other driving vehicles and pedestrians and all of that. V2X becomes really important there. What we're looking to do with the autonomous vehicles right now, there's shuttles that kind of take you to and fro up Technology Parkway. We're looking to expand that. We operate in an area called Technology Park. If you're familiar with it, it's a 500-acre area. Curiosity Lab is kind of the heartbeat of that. We're looking to take our test track and expand it out to have residents, people from out of town, other users experience what it's like in an AV, in an autonomous vehicle that is going side by side. So we're really trying to create the city of the future. Not only are there V2X and cameras as sensors and LiDAR and all sorts of other connected cool things going on, but we really want it to be practical. We want to take riders from City Hall, Tech Park area, up to town center to get lunch. We've got a brewery at the end of Tech Park. That's a good place to go as well, autonomous vehicles. So we're trying to kind of connect it in this whole practical way that's scalable to what we're all talking about here. And it's been a good ride. We continue to innovate that way and look forward to what that brings.
Very cool. Any final thoughts from our panelists here? Any other last things?
Yeah, I think one interesting thing is when we talk about economic development, as technology moves forward, with EVs. But I'm always down in Peachtree Corners. I was joking with them a little bit, but these collaborations are great economic development opportunities for municipalities. I mean, you've got companies that want to be placed there. You know, you have startups that may start up and, you know, take shape there. So, I mean, although we're talking about EV and everything else, there is an economic development opportunity for municipalities. I just thought I wanted to share that. And plus, I can be a concerned citizen when I'm down in this area now since I've met them. So when I go to city council, there you go.
I just want to add one thing about the, it's in the same autonomous vehicle arena. With all these new cars with the automatic driver detection systems and everything in them, they're making them where they're doing over-the-air diagnostics, over-the-air repairs. So eventually, you're going to be able to ride down the road and your car, a check engine light may come on. It's going to do an over-the-air repair and the car's fixed. So it's going to limit the amount of downtime you'll have with your car being in the shop, which is going to definitely increase your productivity. And it may cost a little bit more, but you won't have to stop.
Make Tom, just to end this, I know we're talking about electric vehicles and connected vehicles, but I do want to take into account the importance of freight in our planning. We look at it in terms of the freight may be the largest emitter of pollutants in the future without additional controls. And so, you know, we talk about electric or hydrogen or whatever there is, something that can come out for the heavy duty space is very important. And you can have autonomy without electric. You can have autonomy with hydrogen fuel cells, for instance. So we do need to be open-minded to the diversity of needs and demands. So, I mean, the Georgia EPD is fuel agnostic in that regard. We encourage electric vehicles because it's a great opportunity, but if there's other fuel sources, hydrogen or whatever it may be, we're into that. We're also looking at, our space goes beyond just looking at light duty or heavy duty vehicles. We also look at rail, and we also look at the airports and aircraft, and we work with Hartsfield. And so there is some efforts in that sector to find ways to reduce emissions through even electric or hydrogen or something with the aircraft.
Well, on behalf of Siemens, I appreciate all of our panelists being up here and speaking today, and ask everybody to give a round of applause.